we kind of say, oh, I know I'm going to do this. But then when things get hard, we quit. You have to know that you know that you know, right? And then step into it. And then the other things, find a good mentor that's done it 5 years, 10 years in, and listen to them. Don't just think you know.
The Tom Screen podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out, or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts and we can help in this area. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and for every direct account we look after, we sponsor a child in a developing nation with food, water and education. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call, and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode. Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Brandon Neely. Brandon, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Thomas, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It is my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, first off, I love the ethical marketing point because when I first started in business, we started a brick and mortar coffee shop, and it was all about ethical economics and community building. Those were our two main points. And the reason we did that was because we learned about the injustice in the coffee world, and, saying, oh, somebody needs to do something about that. And what I've learned, if you keep getting that little nudge of somebody needs to do something about that, usually it's like God or some higher being saying, oh, that's probably you. So we started this ethical coffee shop, which was, we wanted to be a nonprofit, for-profit hybrid. It was not a thing. We became a social enterprise. It was cutting edge, apparently, and launched that coffee shop. It was the hardest thing I've ever done because I didn't have a rich relative to give me all the money to start it. We bootstrapped and launched that. And then and we've had some challenges in that for sure, which I might get into. But then we had a thing happen. My wife became pregnant. That's a big thing. And we realized kind of a challenge we're gonna have to face was having a baby, and knowing it's illegal to have a baby behind the food bar and all that stuff. So we were like, well, I think we might need to transition and sell. So we sold that business, didn't know what we were going to do, but then ended up, of all things in the financial services world, learn it. Like, because I was able to sell that business, I didn't realize it was an anomaly to be able to sell. Most businesses apparently closed and all of that. But we had some financial strategies that got us through and ultimately led us to sell the business. So one of my friends, who's now my mentor, said, hey, you want to do what I do? And I was like, sure, that sounds awesome. I don't have any other thing I'm up for. And ended up getting into the financial services world. And I did not know how opinionated the financial services world is. So that's how I ended up here. And then Profit First certified as well.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I feel like this two-part question. The first part is around, for those that don't know, because it's old news for you, but for those that aren't aware, why is, let's say, mass-produced coffee unethical? And then the second part of that, so I don't forget, is, and what do you mean by financial services being opinionated?
Oh, yeah. Two totally different questions, for sure. Well, you think about it, this idea, and I don't know if you've researched this or not, but like slavery exists, right? In a lot of ways, we get our clothing, and I think about like buying ethical clothing, right? Is the person that made the clothing paid fairly? And in the coffee world, a lot of times they are making less than $1 a day, or children are making it, chocolate and cocoa. And there's been a lot of changes in the supply chain to become more, not just saying, okay, slavery is, I don't see slavery because I bought this thing and I don't see it in my backyard, right? But we don't realize that we bought something from somewhere else, and that cheap cup of coffee cost somebody something. And so how do we think strategically about the purchases that we make? And coffee being the second most widely traded commodity in the world, and I'm in America. Americans are the number one consumer of coffee. If you want to change the world, get in the coffee world. You can do a lot of change that way. And our slogan was change the world one cup at a time. So did that really was the main reason. And at the same time, build a local community that can empower. So that cheers effect was kind of what we were going for. And then the financial services question, we knew our biggest risk was our business, right? In everything. On our financial services world, we're taught, go invest in big tech, go invest in this, go invest in that, and you'll make a lot of money. But our biggest investment was our business. And so we needed stability in place. We needed to be able to pay off our debt in a way that was smart. And we didn't realize that, the whole financial services world is about risk, no risk, no reward, right? That kind of idea. And what's happening now is a lot of people are risking instead of savers. They haven't built a foundation. They are putting everything on the line and maybe losing. And so we didn't realize that there's the Wall Street people, and then there's the insurance people, and they fight back and forth. There's the Dave Ramsey people, and we just knew that this concept in the profit first system changed our life as business. We were ultimately able to sell a business as opposed to close a business because of our the way we built our finances. Does that make sense?
Thank you for that. It's a good clarification. Thank you for that. I am interested to ask you about Profit First. But before we move on from your initial business, when you are referring to, let's say, some injustice within a mass-produced product, you mentioned fashion, and coffee is a new concept to me. How did you go about it being from an idea, meaning let's start a ethical coffee shop, to taking it into action? So what were the things that you did which made you able to produce coffee in an ethical way?
Yeah, one was having the relationships with a good roaster and a real a friendship with them, and another is we mentored under people who had a coffee shop, right? Most people think, I have a great idea, I'm going to go do it. And they don't take some time to learn under somebody else. So we took some time, built some relationships that helped us get there. And knowing, for me, it's a spiritual thing. I felt like we were called to do it and making the steps, right? Not just having a business plan, but what do I need to do to grow it? So in the beginning, we both had our corporate jobs. It was 2011 when we opened. And we made some shifts, right? To her, she left her job, which she made more money, to intern at it for free at another place. And then we bootstrapped. We actually literally bought coffee in bulk, bagged it, and sold it to our people that we were building our email list for. And we would put it in suitcases and deliver them once a week. And I was like, man, we are literally drug dealers. Seriously, a bag of coffee on the L in Chicago. So that's how we got started. And then you have to start building. What I learned in that whole system, and our business name was Overflow. As a business owner who's a more of a giver, I feel like what I learned is I can't help the people in Africa if I'm not taking care of myself. And there was some times that literally, this is 10 years ago, we had some big challenges. We almost had my grandma died. My wife had a miscarriage, some other things that happened, including finances. And we almost our marriage almost fell apart during that second year. And that was hard because I knew that we were called and we were moving in that direction. But when it was Overflow, we weren't taking care of ourselves. So we couldn't overflow to the people around us. And that was kind of an eye-opening thing. And one of my mentors said, okay, you paid off your debt. You've done this. How much are you paying yourself? And I was like, well, that doesn't matter. And that was a hard conversation to have because we weren't valuing our own self, both physically, mentally, and emotionally in our marriage, that we needed to make some changes. And that's ultimately led us to Profit First, making sure we do date night regularly, because again, if you have a great business but you're divorced, that doesn't, help. And also making sure that I'm taking care of myself physically, doing those habits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. I did, when you said you had a coffee shop, for some reason I did envisage, something akin to Costa Coffee or something where people come in and sit down. Yep. But you were essentially a kind of like a wholesaler. Is that a good way to describe it?
That was in the beginning. We were wholesalers before it opened. And then we had the actual doors open, right? And so you have to think when it comes to coffee, you get the product, right? You get the beans, the green beans. And then they go to a roaster, right? I wasn't a roaster. So then the roaster sells it to me and then I sell it to the consumer. That's how, like, supply chain kind of thing. But we had a actual physical location, which was awesome.
Okay.
No.
So you'd gone into business and you were busy, mm-hmm. You were doing your thing with the shop, but essentially is it right to say that you weren't financially prioritizing yourself and you needed to make some different decisions? Do you want to share what that looked like?
So here's the thing: when a kid comes into play, I can eat ramen all day long, and that's okay, right? But then when you have a child, or like I was a caretaker of my mother-in-law, still am today, things shift. And I realized, like, hey, this kind of lifestyle, even though I started like taking care of ourselves, we were paying ourselves better. We needed to make sure what kind of life do I want him to be? Do I want this child that's coming in? Is he going to be around the coffee shop for 20 years? Is that what? And so kind of what we started thinking, and this is what I think about with life and business, is reverse engineering. Like, reverse engineer, where do I want to end up? And I thought I wanted to end up having this coffee shop for 30, 40 years, but that changed, right? And so reverse engineering, okay, where do I want to, and then it ended up leading me to Ohio, of all places, which is not the place I thought I'd ever end up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, sort of for me, I am interested to know, because you went from, obviously, from a financial perspective, should we say, not doing well to doing well in your coffee shop. What made you want to leave it?
Sometimes in community, there's some other things that you don't, that were just not healthy. We were in a building that was got us where we started, but it wasn't a healthy environment for us. Not maybe more emotional healthy, and that's kind of where I'm like, all right, I think it's time to go. And there was a point where, and again, this maybe is a really huge thing. We had a flood in the business. Literally, the roof was off and the flood happened, and it was one of those days where one of these guys kept coming to me previously. How much do you want to sell this for? What do you want to do? What's your number? And after the flood, I was like, man, I do not want this anymore. Don't want to deal with floods and all of this. And after we got recovered from the flood, we were able to recover from the flood because of the financial tools we put in place that helped us recover. But ultimately he came in and I was like, hey, I want to know what your number is. Because again, having a wife who's 4 months pregnant, I had to start thinking, what am I going to do? Because those priorities had shifted. Right? I loved what I did, but priorities shift when you have family. My customer might have been number one or number two. He got bumped, when you had a kid.
So what did the potential buyer say?
Oh, he's been wanting me to do something for a long time. And so we sold it. This is crazy. We sold it. We were on a year-to-year lease. And they, right after we sold it, the landlord kicked them out, like literally 6 months later, which I kind of knew and thought that was going to happen. Because he had more financial resources, he was able to reopen and buy a building somewhere else, which was pretty powerful. And it's still going to this day, even since COVID. And some of it, I think, man, I don't know if I would have had the bandwidth to do what I've done, even financial, because I didn't come from rich relatives, to overcome COVID, even as a coffee shop. But I bet you they did because of different streams of income. Does that make sense? I have no idea because I never walked down that path of keeping the coffee shop with a baby since COVID.
But some good experience for you there, right?
Yeah. Oh man. Again, as I talk to clients and people, I love working with business owners. And what happens when you start a business, oftentimes you're Twitter pated, I guess you could say. It's almost like you're the first in love kind of thing, and you think everything's going to go perfect. But you would never step into business if you knew all of the heartache and some of the stuff that's going to happen, and you'll hit brick walls, and how that will work. And so a lot of business owners, that's why I love working with them, is saying, okay, how do I help you get in a better position? Like most business owners, this is why, again, I love Profit First. Most businesses do not pay themselves, business owners. They say, oh, I'll pay myself later. And they keep reinvesting in the business or divesting somewhere else. And they don't take care of their biggest asset, which is them. And that was something that I realized, hey, we are our biggest asset. Like, employees are great, all of that, but if you don't take care of that, and even as if you sell the business, they're going to want to look at the balance sheet and say, okay, well, how much were you making, right? Because that's how a sale's going to go. And if you don't have the proper business developed, it might be a business that has an operation expense of 120%. Looks like it's great, but they're bringing in 100, and they're in the red, right? And so you want to have a profitable business, not a bleeding business.
So what would you say to someone who was about to open a coffee shop? So they're basically day one. What advice do you give them?
As a coffee shop, here's the one thing I would say is do anything else but that. If you want to make money, go into some other field, right? But then here's the thing in any business venture that I would say, know that you know that you know that this is where you're called, right? Like have so much resolve. And I think this is the problem in our culture. We kind of say, oh, I know I'm going to do this. But then when things get hard, we quit. Right. And so you have to know that you know that you know, right? And then step into it. And then the other things, find a good mentor that's done it 5 years, 10 years in, and listen to them. Don't just think you know. Does that make sense?
So basically, you're going to get a load of phone calls then after this episode.
Oh, and we ended up creating our community here. What I hated when I had the coffee shop is this question when people would reach out and say, "Can I just pick your brain?" I hate when people say that because I'm like, "Yeah, I just want to learn," and they would want the shortcuts. And something about going through it, there's some pain that you're going to experience. It's going to be different than me, right? And sometimes, and when they would come in and ask me, "Can I just pick your brain?" and they never bought a cup of coffee, that would piss me off. I'm like, at least buy a coffee when you're going to ask me for a $30,000 consulting thing, right? Anyway, that was one of my pet peeves. So I love it when people do, as long as they're teachable.
And they buy a cup of coffee.
And they buy a cup of coffee, or like, now I'm in the financial services. Hey, like a few comments, like, comment on that stuff goes a long way in a lot of places.
So just for clarification, you said that you're in financial services. What's the actual job title? What do you do for people?
Yeah, so I am a Profit First certified. So I know the Profit First system. Every business owner should read Profit First. I'm also a bank on yourself specialist. So in America, there's a thing with like having properly designed life insurance, whole life insurance that has a cash equivalent piece. And so when we were doing our into our business, we were saving money, $400 a month per person, into our life insurance policies, and we used our life insurance cash value to pay for or to take care of a high interest debt, right? And so that really put us in a better position to have leverage, to be able to weather the storms, and to grow our business. So if you combine the Profit First system, right, paying yourself first, knowing those numbers, and then you combine the infinite banking system, knowing that everybody's in the banking business, regardless of if we sell coffee or we're a podcast producer, right? We're all in the banking business. How do I have more control over that system as well? Does that make sense? So I'm a Bank on Yourself certified and Profit First certified, and more of what I think is I'm a cash flow management specialist for business owners.
Well, the Profit First, shall we say, the topic, I've spoken about it a couple of times, but I've never heard anyone speak about infinite banking before. So would you give a definition of what it means to you?
Yeah. So this part is, again, it's in using a properly designed whole life insurance policy that is designed more like, you know how in our businesses or in general, we have to have sinking funds or cash accounts, right? And we're told invest in the market, right? Invest in this. What we do is that we divest away from whatever we're doing. So what I love in building my infinite banking policy is my greatest asset is me. If something happens to me, my wife would have been sunk, right? So having this policy in place means that regardless of what happens, she'll at least be made whole to a degree. I mean, you're never actually made completely whole because of the emotional stuff, but financially, she would be in a better place from that side. But then we were able to use the cash part of the policy to better position ourselves, whether it's take care of high interest debt or my trip to Ireland. I took a trip right before our son was born. We took a loan from our policy and then we paid it back. And we've done this with our property in our house. So we have to pay taxes, right? Every person has to pay taxes, right? So we instead do a self-escrow where we will pay our own taxes. We'll just happen to save it in our policy first and then pay it out over time from that. So it's a cash
So would
flow.
you say it's a more of a flexible insurance policy than most standard life insurance policies?
Yeah. And you want to find the right, for me as a advisor, I'm not just saying, here, let me build this thing. I'm going to ask you, what are your dreams? What are your goals? What do you want this to do for you? And how is this going to feed into your dream of a coffee shop, right? And how can we leverage the policy? Because it's a savings, it's not really an investment, but how can you use it to put yourself in a better position, right? And that's the power of that, because then if you have cash, all of a sudden you have more options, right? If you have the ability to buy something right now, options are open, right? But if everything is kind of in America, we have the 401k that we can't touch until we're 59 and a half, and we get penalized if we access it, and we want to grow a business or we leave the job, and then we're kind of stuck. We have this money in jail that we can't use to grow our business. So then that seems odd.
Can you clarify what the still method is for me?
Yeah. So that's a great one. We just created this. Everybody's in a lot of times in chaos. It's when it comes to money and the financial system, it's confusing, haphazard, anxious, overwhelming, and stressful, right? That's chaos. And a lot of times people are in financial chaos, right? And they don't even know it. Our world is actually meant to put us into that place. And there's a marketer, Donald Miller, says, if you confuse, you lose. If you ever heard of him, he's a great author. And he said, if you confuse, you lose. Well, I've learned in the financial codes and the tax codes, it's meant to confuse us, right? Totally confuse us and make it so overwhelming that we just lose money. We lose everything, different things. Business can be confusing. That's why I love the profit first method, because it's pretty simple if you just kind of understand how it works. And you're just using the percentage model. So then the still method is our method of overcoming chaos. So the S stands for set your sights, right? You have to actually have a goal and a plan of where you want to go, right? And a lot of people are just sleepwalking through life, right? They don't know, and you need to set with it. Set, where do you want to go? Set your sights. Then you need to track your in and out, not just have a goal, but what's going in, what's going out. If you're, making 100,000, but you're spending 120, that's going to be a bad thing, right? So track in and out, that's YNAB budgeting, all that stuff. The I is inspect your progress, right? So you want to just track it, but you got to inspect and say, okay, I'm overspending here. I'm making stuff here. What do I need to do? Maybe the 80-20 rule, if you ever heard of that rule. Focus in on the 20% that's actually working, drop the other stuff. Then you want to look for 1% adjustments. So looking for the little things that you can do. Because if you do 1% adjustments over time, that really adds up. Not big hurdles, I'm going to be a millionaire tomorrow, but what are the 1% adjustments that I can make to get better, right? And then the second L is live deliberately. Again, not sleepwalking through life, but live deliberately in our business, in our finances, with the products that we use to build our business and wealth. And then you do this still method regularly. You don't just say, I reached it. Now we're done. Right. Does that make sense? It's kind of like a spiritual practice that you then go back in a month and say, okay, set your sights. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I have a goal, but again, something comes in the way, not in the way, but like a child, right? Those goals might be altered a little bit, right? And so you have to do that again. And you do that with your wife or significant other or business partner. Just a simple way to figure out where your priorities are. And you could do this not just with money, but with dating, right? Or you're, making sure, hey, am I I want to have a healthy marriage, right? What I need to do, track, am I going on date nights with her, inspect, all that fun kind of stuff, not just money.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Does that make sense?
That's cool. It does lead me on to one of the questions which I was going to ask you though, which is normally I ask what your goals are, but now I can say, what are your sights?
Yeah. I really, as I'm building this, I want to help more and more business owners just thrive, make it through, and not see the failure rate. 85% of small businesses fail, not because of what they didn't have the passion. They probably ran out of money, right? In some regards. And so I want to see more and more businesses thrive. I want to see my son, who's 4 years old. One of my goals is to have him visit 6 of the 7 continents before he's 18. And it's a selfish goal because then I have to go with him to all those places. So building that in. Those are some of my sites, and just serving more and more people.
Well, thank you for that. I tend to like the personal ones. So yeah, thank you for sharing it. Is there anything that I should have asked you about today?
Yeah. I would say we're not very big people. I'm not going to buy a big $1 million house or anything like that. My wife's a minimalist. So sometimes I'm like, I'm growing our business. What do I want to do? I just want to make more impact. I loved being on here, sharing our story. The main thing I would love is, as you're talking to business owners, right? And to your audience, know that you want to do this and just actually do it. There's so many people who talk about it. I call it the wantrepreneurs. There's a lot of wantrepreneurs out there, and they don't actually do anything. And sometimes I'm like, all right, I want to talk to somebody who actually does podcasts, not just, I want to eventually do a podcast, but the action takers, take action, and be a learner. I have a question for you. How do you learn?
How did I learn what business or?
How do you learn anything? Like, what do you do to learn and to grow yourself?
I I've typically described it as immersion, or some people call it like tunnel vision or something. So if there's something that you, as you say, you really want to know how to do something, or you really want to do something, you immerse yourself in that topic, and you basically tunnel vision it until you know exactly. Well, you've got at least some expertise, but you
Yep.
know enough to move forward with it. And then when you do move forward with it, you get some feedback and you adjust your approach, and you just keep doing it until you make the progress you want to make. Doesn't sound
Yeah.
very complex, but that's what I do.
Well, and I also think about some of this. There's so much information on the internet. You'll find everything that you want on the internet, whether you want to believe aliens exist or not, you'll find it. And I think that sometimes we'll use our confirmation bias to say whole life insurance sucks, and you should go this way. And what I like to again ask people and really say is, what do you want? And can these things help you get to where you want, not to get to where somebody else wants you to get? And that's put all your bias on the table and really think strategically, which is a hard thing to do in our world, I guess. Maybe.
Do you have any closing thoughts for us today?
Yeah, go if you want, like, go to the Still Method and download that cheat sheet. My closing thoughts is on for business owners, take control of your own destiny and realize, like, again, we're all in the banking business. How do we best position ourselves where we take more of the lion's share in our business, and make sure, again, read the profit first. Make sure you, as a business owner, are positioning yourself to create that muscle of paying yourself first. It doesn't have to be at TAPS, which is 50%, what Mike McAllowitz says, 50% owners pay. You could start at 10%, right? And then build it up. But create that muscle. It's almost like going to the gym, right? And you start doing that, I bet you the people around you are going to love you more. And that just also shows that you care about yourself, not just the social impact or whatever else. It's a both and.
Yeah, well, I've heard a phrase, something along the lines of look after yourself in the way that you'd look after a close friend that you care about, something like that. And
Yeah.
of course, if you were thinking about another person's behalf, you'd think, well, of course you need to pay yourself properly. But when it's you, maybe you don't think that. So
Yep.
I think profit first can help there, right?
But that was, I'm a caretaker of my mother-in-law, and having a newborn, we were like, all right, things need to shift. And it wasn't just me. Again, I could run on ramen, maybe. Wasn't the healthiest thing, right? But you have to, like, especially when other people care and or around you. Again, if you think about that muscle, it was a child and a senior that I had to take care of that put us in that position. But you can work on that muscle. That's, again, using the profit first method and saying, okay, 10%. Next quarter, I'm going to raise it to 11%. I'm going to lower my OPEX or whatever. Again, only you know your business. So.
All right. Well, if people want to connect with you to perhaps use one of your services or follow any content that you might put out, where do they go?
Yeah. So you can find our podcast, Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast, on all the podcast places. If you go to YouTube, we have a lot of YouTube videos. We've been doing lots of content there. Still growing that. It takes time to build YouTube. You just do a search of Wealth Wisdom Financial, and I believe you'll find us. If you find a good picture of somebody that looks like me and another hot woman. That's my wife. Subscribe to that, and then go to the stillmethod.com and download that resource there, and you will find us through all of those places.
Brandon Neely, thank you very much for being a great guest.
Thanks for having me.